Now, Macau has a very interesting history. This area was first leased to Portugal by China in 1557 for them to make a trading post, and a huge town soon developed around it. And it then became the biggest hub of trading in Asia, if not the world. If you know anything about the history of Japan and how it was first discovered by Portuguese traders, they first came from Macau. That was how Japan was first discovered by Europe. So for 300 years, this was the place for trade in Asia. But then, as soon as Hong Kong, over the other side of the Pearl River, became a part of the British Empire, and that at the same time as Portugal was declining as a country, basically all of the importance of Macau went over to Hong Kong. So that was around in the early 1800s, and then in 1887, Macau officially became part of Portugal. It became a Portuguese colony, and it stayed that way up until around 1966, when the Cultural Revolution was happening in China. A massive riot happened in Macau against Portuguese rule. It was called the 12-3 incident. A lot of people died, and it basically led to Portugal admitting they don't have full control of this city anymore. So they went over to China saying, can you please help us? Can you please co-rule with us? So from 1966, even though Macau was still officially a Portuguese colony, it was de facto a Chinese-ruled city, and it was officially handed back to China in 1999, making it the last European colony in Asia ever. And today, it is just a thriving metropolis. It rates very high in the Human Index Development list, but it also suffers from one of the worst income inequalities in the world, because this city is so densely populated. You could have a billionaire and someone who lives in poverty living on the same street. And when we go over to basically the casino areas, you'll soon see why. This area now earns more from gambling revenue than Las Vegas in the space of only little over 2 decades, which is crazy to think about. But this area still has so much history, and I can't wait to discover it. Where I am now is Guai Fortress, and this is a military fortress on basically the highest peak of Macau. And at the start of Macau's history, this fortress was instrumental in protecting Macau from foreign invasion. In 1622, there was a Dutch invasion where the Dutch basically tried to oust Portugal from Macau, but thanks to this fortress, they were able to repel the invasion. And today, you can see this lighthouse here. This was the very first modern lighthouse on the Chinese coast, built in the 1800s, and it's where Macau gets its coordinates from. If you ever type in Macau's coordinates on a map, it basically brings you to the pinpoint of this lighthouse. And behind me, you can also see a Franciscan chapel. So during Portuguese rule, basically the Franciscan Christian religion was very important to basically the Portuguese in Macau, and it has a beautiful chapel here. And it is also basically one of the best places to get a free view of the city. It is stunning here. Now you'll probably recognize the church behind me, or the ruins of it anyway. These are the ruins of St. Paul's, and this is probably the most well-known landmark in all of Macau. Now this church was finished in 1640 and at the time was the biggest church in all of Asia. But during a typhoon in 1835, it caught fire and completely burned down, with only the facade at the front left. And basically, this has been standing here now for well over 170 years. So at a time, the people of Macau were very worried that all of what was left of it would crumble and collapse. But the government recognized that it was an important landmark, so they reinforced the ground with concrete below, and now it's here to stay. So once you walk through the ruins, you'll then come across a museum and the crypts of the church. And I didn't film in there because I never like to film in crypts where what is people's final burial place, because in the crypt you can actually see human bones that they found during the excavation of this place. So it's still a very sacred place that you still need to show respect to. But when I think Macau, this is what comes in my mind, this place. So I'm so happy that I could come here. I am now is Mount Fortress. Now this place is just above the ruins of St. Paul, so if you visit the church, this will be your obvious next location that you'll visit. Now this place was finished in the 1620s, and just like Guai Fortress, this place was principal in protecting and defending the city, especially against the Dutch invasion. Now this place was decommissioned in the 1960s and is now home to the Museum of Macau. But one interesting thing is the fortress, or the old part of it, are covered with cannons, especially like this one here. But a niche little fact is all the cannons only face out towards the sea. There are no cannons that face towards the Chinese border, to show that the Portuguese didn't see the Chinese as a threat. They were only here to defend the city. So it's a nice little thing that the Portuguese wanted to show China that they weren't their enemies, with no cannons facing towards the China border. So where I am now is Haxa Beach, and this is as south as you can get in Macau. This is the very bottom of the map. This is Macau's only beach, and Haxa, it actually means black sand, but you can see behind me there actually isn't that much black sand. And from what I read online, the reason was because this beach was in danger of disappearing. So what the government did was basically just bring a heap of normal yellow sand and just dumped it on the beach. And what you get now is this sort of dirty mix of black and yellow. But it is a pretty neat beach either way, because if you come here and you follow the coast all the way around, you'll come to a road where there is lots of Portuguese style villas that look like they've been there since the colonial days. Some have been abandoned, some have people still living in them, some have been destroyed and had new summer houses built on top of them, but pretty interesting to see them there. And then you follow that road and you'll come to this beautiful rock road coastal path that is just the thing that Instagram was made for. There is some beautiful pictures that you can get if you walk that path, and you walk far enough, you'll come to this Chinese pavilion jetty that's where, just watching the sunset from there where I was now, it was just beautiful. So definitely happy to be in this area of Macau. And of course, the best reason to come here is because on a holiday, there's nothing that makes you realize you're on holiday than just walking on a nice beach with the Pacific Ocean right there. It's stunning, and I'm really happy to be here. So I'm just walking around Cotai, which is an area on Taipa Island, and this is the area where a majority of the hotels and casinos are in Macau. Walking around on this particular street as well, it feels like the Vegas Strip. It is something. The lights, the music, the amount of tourists here, like, this is crazy. So I'm currently on the Cotai Strip, which, as you can guess, is Macau's answer to the Las Vegas Strip. And this stretch of road is where you'll find the majority of hotels, casinos, shopping malls in Macau. Now, this land is actually reclaimed land from the sea, because from the mainland on China, Macau was actually made up of two islands, Taipa and Koloan, which is actually where I'm staying. And then they just reclaimed all this land from the sea and built this. And this is crazy. Like, I've never seen anywhere like this. I've never been to Vegas, but I'm assuming it's something like this. The lights, the casinos, the amount of high street brands, fashion, names. It's like being in an episode of Outfab or something. Like, I've never felt so poor in my life just being on this one stretch of road, like knowing I can't afford a single thing. Can't afford to stay in a hotel here, can't afford to shop anywhere, can't afford to go to any restaurants. It's definitely something. I'm definitely glad I've seen it, but the amount of decadence and billionaire dirty money that I'm seeing at the moment, does make you feel a bit uneasy, this amount of decadence, but it is eerily beautiful. Now, I've got to say, the thing I love most about Macau is that it's influenced by years of Portuguese culture and history is obvious to see. Now, where I am now is Seville Square, And this is basically the main square of the city centre. Basically most of the high streets run into this square. And it's basically like being in Lisbon. You could knock me unconscious, wake me up here and tell me it's Lisbon and I would easily believe you. I've been to so many squares like this in Portugal, and it's so strange that this is basically China. Like the black and white wavy tiles, basically you'd find that in every Portuguese city, and to find it here, I'm in love with it. Compared to Hong Kong, which was under British rule for over 100 years, you don't see anything like this in comparison. There's next to no obvious British architecture in Hong Kong, but in Macau it's basically on every other street, and I love that. It's so cultured, it's so beautiful. So I've been walking around the city centre of Macau all day and I am exhausted, but I have found the perfect place to relax and just take a load off my feet. This is the Lulu Yacht garden. So this is a Chinese garden in the centre of Macau. It was built in 1906 as part of the residence of a local merchant, but in 1974 he handed it over to the government and they've now made a public park, so it's completely free to walk around this garden. And it is beautiful. I'm so glad I found this place because I can just relax, collect my thoughts and just take in this beautiful scenery.